In every day of the year since 2023, Fox News has run more articles referencing transgender people than there were days in the year. This is equally true for the UK, where both the Telegraph and the Daily Mail outstrip even the BBC by 2 to 5 times in any given month. Yara's presence in the trans community will forever stain it as long as they don't officially condemn him. I think it's always like so fascinating how in the minds of transphobic people, especially when it comes to like the right-wing content creator enjoyers, the Asmongold fans and so on, in their mind, I'm incredibly popular and influential, and I'm like representative of like everything that they hate. So they blow me up in their minds as like this big entity. I saw a video a while ago where Hassan was talking about like a similar thing when it comes to like how in the minds of like Asmongold, people like Casey-Tron, Denims are like these huge entities, and Frogan as well. But like if you look at the analytics, if you look at the stats, you'd think that we would be way bigger content creators. Like Denims has a decent size, like 3,000 average viewers and so on. But like someone like Asmongold obviously has like 10 times as much. But then you look at other creators that they constantly obsess over and talk about. Like Casey-Tron, someone with like 200 viewers, a similar size to me when it comes to streaming. You would think the way that they talk about us, the way that they constantly post clips and, push like these harassment campaigns, you'd think that we were like these huge influential creators who are going to destroy their sanctity, their safe space, right? If you look at me, for instance, like I have 140 views on average, and I haven't really been that big for that long, right? I've been growing in the past 2 years. I actually saw like someone who was like, oh my god, Niara makes less than minimum wage with YouTube, and it's like, yeah, I'm a small creator. Like if you look at my stats here, I was like estimated monthly earnings, it's more around like $100 to like $300. There's 800 that was like a one-off thing, but I get like 200, 300 bucks. I'm a pretty small creator. I have like 10,000 views, 4,000 views on my videos. These have been like pretty decent actually, but in their minds, they act like I'm as big as someone like Asmongold. This huge entity, like they are David and I'm Goliath. That is how they act. The way that they talk about someone like Frogan, where they are diving on Frogan's, like, she has less than 100 viewers. They think that like I am making the trans community look bad, and I am doing like these harassment and cancellation campaigns because like I'm leading the charge and all of these things. I have a very small platform. Like the real big entities are people like Asmongold, people like Kirchhoff, who have like these entire like right-wing networks behind them. The entirety, even like the US government, like JD Vance retweeting Asmongold and so on. Like people in positions of power backing up some of like these creators, throwing so much money at them. I make content for trans people. I'm in a leftist space. A lot of people on the left do not have a lot of money. There's no network. There's no like huge community backing creators like me up. There's no position of power here, but like in their minds, because I'm just constantly being posted in their echo chambers and so on, they constantly see me, they constantly see people like Insane Cope constantly posting my fucking tweets, and it's just crazy to me. It's crazy to me how you'd think, if you are in like this ecosphere, how you'd think I'm like this big evil entity, huh? I'm like the big left that they need to destroy. But I'm literally just a small bean. It just shows how much they fear you getting bigger. I think these people really don't like the idea of more people getting the confidence of speaking up and backing up someone like me. If I don't face consequences for calling out transphobes and wanting their sponsors to remove themselves, if I don't get any consequences, that would give the other people the confidence to also call for bigots to be removed from the space, to lose their platforms and so on. But like, for me, it's like really fascinating because like during the whole Kirche situation, even like with Annavalence, it was like, oh my god, this huge media empires trying to go after this small VTuber, and then it's like, I made $200,000 in merch sales. Aha, take that, haters. And it's like, you talk about life ruination, you cry about like deplatforming because like some small VTuber, back then I had like, I don't know, 5,000 followers on Twitter, was like, why is GamerSubs partnering with someone who is spreading transphobia, who says shit like, oh, they are doing a hostile demographic takeover because, you know, they built a mosque in London, like a small niche community that was like funded through like the Muslim community. The way that they always pick like screenshots of posts from like random people on Blue Sky with like zero likes, zero impressions, to point the finger at them being like, oh my god, they're calling for XYZ to be kirked. And it's like, that's insane. But like, yeah, some people are going to have like some insane posts, but they push the idea that this is like some huge entity that they need to like rally behind and go after. And then they think that it's like an own to be like, haha, you can't even get like 200 viewers. Haha, you don't even make that much money. It's like, yeah, I'm a small creator. You're a huge fucking like network of people with like large influences and like connections to people in positions of power. You have like entire like billionaires, like, you know, Elon Musk boosting someone like Asmongold. I do not have that same backing, and it's always like the same, right? It's always like this victim mentality of people in positions of power. You know, the oppressors acting like they are being oppressed because someone from a marginalized group is like speaking up and being like, hey, actually you shouldn't abuse trans people. The thing is just like, they have like this tactic and it works. It's crazy how like it works, because like people on the right, people in conservative spaces, they have like this hive mind mentality. All of these things would not work if right-wingers weren't naturally submissive and subservient to people in positions of power. If I'm like part of the cult, if I'm part of the hive mind, then I can feel big and strong if I go after like those that are like, you know, opposing the hive mind. I don't want to get pushback from people that I'm aligned with. I want to bully and pearl clutch and so on when it comes to like people on the left, because I've been taught that the radical lunatic leftists and the trans Tifa foxes are evil and they're making the trans community look bad. The amount of people who are literally like, oh my god, why is Nyara saying that Asmongold is harming the trans community? No. Actually, Nyara, by existing, you're making the trans community look bad. You're the reason why the trans community is hated. And it's like, I have a very small platform. The reason why somebody like you would think that like, you know, I'm making the trans community hated or whatnot is because you're stuck in a community, in a hive mind, that is literally picking out scapegoats, pointing the fingers, and using them as a justification to hate like an entire group and to go after an entire community. And then it's like, well, you are throwing the first stone, and I'm going to give you like a little bit pushback because I'm calling out the behavior of you throwing the first stone at me. And then you use that as a justification to get like the entire gang to throw stones at me. That is how it works for you. And then like, because you have like the mass, because you have like the group around you, you can tell each other that actually this is justified because I started this by saying that like, hey, you shouldn't throw stones at me. And it's like diluting this entire conversation, and it's turning it into something incredibly weird. If you've ever checked out the Twitter profile of someone who's like a TERF, you will see that their entire feed, their entire space is literally other TERFs who are also obsessively talking about how the evil trans people are doing something bad, right? That's all they see. If I was in that space, if I was stuck in there, if I didn't have critical thinking skills, I would think so too, right? Because like, oh, it's what you see. But what you see is like things that you interact with, right? The feed of my alt account has shifted a lot because I started calling out a lot of like transphobia from TERFs. and now that's all that I see, right? Imagine I wasn't opposed to it. Imagine I wouldn't have like the understanding of the topic, and I would just like take these things at face value. No, the algorithm is just catering towards you. It's not a representation of like the real world. Like when it comes to transphobia and so on, the vast majority of people do not obsessively think whether or not a woman that they see on the street has a penis. The vast majority of people doesn't care where you go pee. You know, what tool you use in order to pee in a public restroom. Most people don't think about that. If you watch Fox News, for instance, you will see every single time something happens that is like negative, something where you could like point the finger at like Trump, they talk about trans people. They talk more about trans people. They continuously talk about trans people. So in their little media empire, in their ecosphere, they are boosting these stories in order to distract the hive mind, and they are eating it up because they do not have the critical thinking skills. So when someone, a big creator like Asmongold, who does not understand the trans topic, but he, understood the assignment of like causing harm to the trans community and pushing the idea that trans people aren't actually real, or trans kids don't exist and so on. Like all of these right-wingers are eating it up. He just points the finger at like some random trans person and pushes the idea that this is some huge entity that is like threatening them. But they are the ones, they are the ones with the big numbers, right? I saw this from Pink News. Fox News produces more trans articles than any other outlet, including LGBTQ+ ones. Fox News reporting on transgender people is so relentless, its article count is quite literally dwarfed every other news publication, including LGBTQ+ news brands. Welcome to the anti-trans outrage factory 2 years later. Keywords: biological sex, gender identity, gender ideology, transgenderism. New York Times in 2005, over 500 times mentioning the keyword transgender in articles. Fox News, Jesus Christ, that is like almost 1,000 times here in 2025. To create an enemy, make them seem ubiquitous, restricting to the 6 conservative outlets I cited as indices of the rising tide of anti-trans sentiment, and only using the 3 mainstream keywords which made the core dataset. 3,453 unique URLs were added to the index during the time the bot has been running. 1,787 are from Fox News alone. In every day of the year since 2023, Fox News has run more articles referencing transgender people than there were days in the year. This is equally true for the UK, where both the Telegraph and the Daily Mail outstrip even the BBC by 2 to 5 times in any given month. It is just about like phrasing maybe old stories, mischaracterizing old stories or news stories, twisting everything in order to push propaganda and radicalize people to go after trans people, because like fascism needs an enemy, and it also needs an enemy that cannot fight back, and because we do not have like people in positions of power. They just love going after us. The linguistic drift I talked about in Hate in a Post-Information Age has come full circle, and it was the word transgender itself that was hurled as invective in the 2024 election that happened 8 months after publication. How did this happen? Does it even matter? A large part of destigmatization of transgender people in our lives hinged on cleaving apart the discussion of sex versus gender from our basic existence as transgender people, but most simply for the briefest possible moment in time, rather than providing qualifiers or overemphasizing assigned sex at birth, or equivocating on whether we know we are who we say we are. The word transgender became a proper adjective. And as small as it may sound, the strategy to undo this progress therefore hinged on emphasizing sex and gender strategically at different times. Whenever possible, many outlets would add both of these pieces of information, such as she identifies as a woman but is biologically male, whereas Sophie is a transgender woman. Immediately communicates all the information the average person needs to know, and communicates those other pieces of information just as effectively without emphasizing their primacy, combining these has the opposite effect. It's kind of like a trans-identified males. Like, is that a trans man? Are you talking about a trans man? I mean, you're using he, him pronouns. You're probably talking about a trans man, right? No, they're just like talking about someone who, you know, identifies as a woman, but you have to, you know, uphold the reproductive roles. So you need to reduce everyone to reproductive organs. This is why they constantly talk about our reproductive organs, and they make everything about reproductive organs. Your biological name, your biological pronouns. Oh, you can't be a woman, you have a penis. Oh my god, you think that women can have dicks. It's like, yeah, because gender and sex is different. The entirety of like the actual issues that need to be addressed is like the separation from like your biological sex, which is also like a loaded term that has been hijacked by transphobes, like made up by transphobes in order to like dehumanize trans people. The separation from your sex and the social construct of gender is incredibly important in order to understand the trans community, and all of these talking points rely on the fundamental understanding then that gender and sex is not the same. Adding all three of these words appear to have become the norm again in outlets like the Washington Post, e.g. she is transgender and identifies as a woman but is biological male. Emphasizes subjectivity, delegitimizing the concept of transgender people in the eyes of many who had started to acclimate to the idea. Words are powerful. Yeah, exactly. The entire purpose is just to invalidate trans people and everything that we've been fighting for. And the fact that like more and more people, because they've been exposed to this language, that they have adopted this language to the point where, you know, even like some trans people refer to themselves in that way in order to like appease the fascists. It is dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous, right? Women are women and trans women are trans women. Why can't you like separate these two? And like the idea that like the adjective impacts the noun in such a way that it cannot fit into like the overall category of the noun is actually incredibly dangerous, and it's transphobic to do that. And then it's like, oh, you call everyone transphobic. It's like, yeah, if you're being transphobic, I'm going to call that out as being transphobic, and you should like take that in. But these people are incapable of like taking anything in when it comes from trans people in general. And it's just like their ecosphere, their eco chamber, like constantly regurgitating the same points over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where they internalize it so much that they don't even question it anymore. That's like how the propaganda works, right? Do you remember like this statistic? Facebook interactions on all trans-related posts by page ideology, October 2025 to September 2021. I am incredibly curious what it would look like right now. I would love to see these statistics, but in 2025. The same when it comes to Twitter.